We're here to speak to art dealer Bernard Jacobson at his gallery in Duke Street, London, about his current exhibition, Bonheur de Vivre. This show is a bit of a departure from your usual shows. Can you explain how and why it came about?
This is probably the most me of a show I've ever done. I mean, it's sort of, in a way, I'm so angry and fed up with what's being projected as art in the last 40 years, especially the last probably 5-10 years, that I decided to do, at least for me, for myself, to know what happened to the 20th century and what I love, which is, it's a return to words that are completely out of, they probably come out of the dictionary, you know, joy, happiness, love, passion, light, colour, even fun, you know, when you've got Calder. So it's this very thing, we've got ourselves in a terrible mess with art, and so I've done the show to kind of get people to look at art again, you know, with those very words of passion, joy, happiness. And it starts off with Matisse, who of course comes right out of Cézanne, but Cézanne is excluded. I mean, I see him as sort of 19th century, really. So it starts off with Matisse, whose god was Cézanne. It then so you've got Matisse paintings and Matisse drawings, and then you go on from there. It goes forward in time to Miró, although he's Spanish, I call him an honorary Frenchman, because the whole thing is very French. And I even thought, however much people say that the 20th century was the American century, in a funny way, I think in art terms, it was very much still the French century, another French century. And it's only recently come to me clearly as to me feeling that way. So it goes from Matisse to the younger Miró. This is the smallest piece in the show. I mean, many people have said, "Oh, this is great, send me photographs of the show," and it really is offensive. Come and see the show. And you know, I don't want to send photographs of the show to people. You know, I mean, it's a matter of coming to see it. I mean, look at that's amazing. That's an amazing bit of art, and it's tiny. And if you come really close, it's so beautiful. And yet, you know, it's minuscule. From Miró, it goes on to Calder, who obviously, as you know, invented the mobile. It goes. And he's the most fun. I think it's the most fun, although a very serious man. I met Calder, and it goes from Calder. It goes to Motherwell, who I've limited for the show only with the collages. He did 800 collages in his life. I've excluded the paintings, which are less to do with you know, a feeling of joy, and they're more intense, more serious. But the collages are very much him going outside the studio, looking out and bringing the studio back bring the world back into the studio. You know, cigarette packs or anything that he could, anything like that he could find and use it as art, and it became art. Motherwell, when he was at Stanford, he was very fortunate that as a kid in his late teens, he was told, "Oh, you should go and visit Gertrude Stein's brother in Palo Alto, just up the road." So he went there and he saw, they said, you know, he's got a great collection, and he was exposed to a huge collection of great Matisses, and he said, "I felt I'd been shot through the heart with an arrow," and that's how he felt, and that changed his world, you know. And you're just seeing the more playful side of Motherwell, which fits the mood of this particular show. And then it ends with a very dear friend of mine, Sam Francis, and that's you know, this is completely about joy, happiness, love, colour, light, space, and it's interesting when I think about him, you know, he tried very hard for me to represent him I'd met him many, many years ago, and he got me to come. We got together, and I remember when we finished talking, and he said, "Yeah, I want you to do it. Let's do it." And the last thing he said to me was, "Let's have fun." One day, Sam, I used to stay with Sam, and in fact, in my bedroom there was a Miró, and in the living room there was a Matisse. So it's all, again, as I said, art coming out of art. But one day he said, "Bernie, I'm just going to pop out for a bit." And we were there. I was there, and in the house, and he just didn't come back. And in the morning, he came back with a huge painting, and he said, "Oh, I did that last night. It's for you."
Wow.
I mean, it's kind of wonderful. It's kind of, that was him. He was a free spirit, a bit of a hippie, a bit of a, and he was full of love. He was just dripping with passion and love. And that's what the whole bloody thing is about. Yeah. And that's what we're losing, and we shouldn't lose it. All of those other artists made Sam be able to make the paintings he made. Take those paintings and other artists away, Sam couldn't have got there. I mean, it needed that. And I think that's terribly important. It's very, it's art coming out of art, as I say, like science coming out of science, or it's not in a vacuum. It's a kind of an ongoing story. I mean, where we go next, I don't know, but this is for me, it's a precis of 20th century beauty. I'm glad you like it, because I adore that. Yeah. I bought it fairly recently. It was a mistake. I went to buy a Motherwell, and it was pouring with rain. I just arrived in New York, and I nearly missed the auction, and I was completely confused. I rushed from Kennedy Airport to this small auction, and a Motherwell came up, and it was getting too expensive, and I just passed. And as I was walking out, I saw on the easel this. And it was complete. I said, "Oh, I'll buy that then." So I went, "Okay, I'll buy it." So it was an afterthought. I think Sam would have loved that story. Yeah. And then this is the most, obviously, I guess the most serious part is the wall of Matisse. When he finally, he went to the south of France and he lived in Nice. And I go there once a year to the building where he lived, and there's a plaque up on the wall where Chekhov lived there, and Matisse lived there, and it's kind of amazing. It reminds me of better times before my time, but it's a pilgrimage every year. Like I go up the road to Cézanne's house as well, up in Aix-en-Provence. So it's, I don't live in the past. I think I live very much in the 21st century, but I think art is a very difficult thing to make. I don't think many people can read a picture. I think people hear pictures, they don't read them, they don't see them, they hear them. And this is about the visual experience. This is very visual.
And Matisse is quoted as saying, "Colour, above all, and perhaps even more than drawing, is a means of liberation."
Yes.
Do you think that colour really is the best way of expressing the joy in the Bonheur de Vivre?
Yes. Yes, in one word. Yeah. I think that, if we ended the century with Sam, who died in, I think, 1994, he had reduced it down to colour and light. And that was what he left himself with. Yes, and all these people are about that same thing. So he set the pattern, as it were. He set the standards. For me, Matisse is the greatest artist of the 20th century. I actually put him above Picasso, although it's a kind of a fight between those two figures. But Matisse, I was in the Museum Modern Art 2 weeks ago, and I went into the Matisse room. It was completely by accident. And when you see the piano lesson, and you see the red studio, and you see the dance, and I felt terribly good. And I've seen those paintings so many times. So I was just uplifted, and I felt life was worthwhile and everything. Matisse has that ability. It's a kind of And it's very hidden. It's very hidden in the paint. It's not. It doesn't hit you. It's not a message. It's just there for you to work out for yourself.
So all of the works on display here are from artists who you represent?
No, the exciting and scary thing about this particular show, there are two artists I've never worked with, and that is Matisse and Miró. And I, as I said, because I'm so disappointed with what we're being told is art today, like Anish Kapoor and Jeff Koons and all that, that I think we need to go backwards to go forwards. I mean, it's a very famous French saying, you have to go backwards to go forwards. And I think we need to go back a bit and retread our steps a bit to be able to go, because none of these artists did it for money. None of them thought about doing it for money, and now it seems to be the only thing that makes an artist, motivates an artist now is money, because they've got nothing to paint about anymore. They've got nothing to. It's about power and money, and they're all kind of working against each other. I think they all come out of the Duchampian way of thinking, and I'm not against Duchamp, the original person. It's not my cup of tea, but I think what he did was interesting back then, 100 years ago. But all these artists, it's very lazy and easy to be Duchampian, because I could do it, you could do it. I mean, and that's what they do. I don't really call them artists. I mean, they're kind of, I call them businessmen actually. You know? And I want to bring people back to art. And it's the joy of living. It's all about joy. It's all about finding other issues other than money and power. You know, and I know it sounds terribly old-fashioned, but if we don't do that, there's nothing left of us. I mean, I remember once Patrick Heron, the English painter, came to my gallery about 25 years ago, maybe a bit more, and he walked in and he said, "Oh, Bernie, great to see you." And it was a big show of Sam Francis, and he said, "Ah, St. Francis." You see, it took somebody like Patrick to understand the greatness of somebody like Sam Francis. You know, he just sort of presses all the buttons for a serious artist.
You mentioned that you'd met Calder once.
I met him once. I just came from London. I was very young. I was in my 20s, and I went to New York to write a novel. And I was walking down Madison Avenue, and I was at Pearl's gallery, and and he was on the doorstep of the gallery. He had his show inside, and he was having a cigarette outside, and we just started talking, and we got on terribly, terribly well. And I said, "Would you sign my catalogue?" And he signed a CA, and we just a friendship was struck up there and then. It was wonderful. And I was nobody. I mean, I was actually nobody at all in the art world or in any world, but he had time for me, and that's what you don't get today. Certainly your role as an artist is an outsider. All these people were outsiders. And the thing about people like Ai Weiwei, he's an insider. He's using all the contacts, the systems, everything. These people didn't think like that. I think Louise Bourgeois is fake. I think Ai Weiwei is fake. I think they're all just fake. They've got nothing to say, and they're very. I saw an amazing program on television. By mistake, I saw a program called Chinatown, and I thought, I was a bit bored. It was Saturday night, 2 nights ago, and I thought, I haven't seen Chinatown since it came out. And I thought, that's what. It was channel 189. It was a channel called Propeller. I thought, okay. So I tuned in. I waited from 9:30 till 10. It turns out it wasn't Chinatown the movie. It's a channel that's promoted by, I don't know, Chinese industry or China's government or something. And it was all these useless artists who are great salesmen, who had studied in Berlin, they studied in New York, they studied here in London town. And they're making these vacuous paintings. They're meaningless paintings. They don't have that. I can read a painting. It sounds rather conceited to say it, but I can read a painting. And I know that's a good painting. I know it's as good in its way as that is from 100 years ago. But these artists have nothing to say as artists, but they have the gift of the gab. And that it was kind of extraordinary. It was actually better than seeing the movie because I learned more about what a shallow society we're living in, you know. It's heartbreaking, actually. It's very serious. I could cry or I could laugh. It's a matter which one I want to do. But sometimes I do get pretty sad and scared at how the art establishment, you know, the Tate and are completely foisting this rubbish onto us by the truckload, you know, show after show of meaningless art. But it's an outrageous thing to say, I know, but there you are. I'm an age where I'm obviously a grown-up. I mean, I'm not old yet. So I thought if I could now do 10, 20 years of trying to correct the picture and get people to go back to love and things like that, it would be, what a wonderful thing to have done, you know, so I'll have a go. And there are many great artists who could have been in the show. Vuillard could have been in the show, certainly Bonheur. You know, there are many artists. I mean, it's very subjective. It's very much my personal vision. It's my personal take, and I've managed to be able to make the show happen. I'd love to think somebody might do this on a big scale and do it in a museum and fill in all the gaps. Yeah.